today's show, I had the opportunity to speak with Paul Resh. Paul is a former investment banker turned fintech founder. He gives some great insight into the current state of M&A and its ongoing recovery. We chat about the pros and cons of SPACs versus IPOs and the three factors driving tech valuations right now. We close with Paul's story of going from investment banker to fintech founder and CEO. I really enjoyed chatting with Paul, and I'm incredibly grateful that he took some time away from his CEO duties to chat with me. I hope you enjoy the show, and without further ado. All right, today I am speaking with Paul Resh. Paul Resh is a certified valuation analyst and currently the co-founder and CEO of Valutico. Valutico is a leading provider of web-based company valuation tools. Prior to founding Valutico, Paul was a visiting associate for the Boston Consulting Group and an investment banker at Deutsche Bank. Paul's educational background is in economics and business administration with a focus on quantitative finance. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I'm very excited to speak to you.
Darryl, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, I was thinking maybe we could kick this off. You're kind of the valuation expert here, so I'd love to kind of hear just your general observations of the M&A market right now, kind of how the recovery outlook looks to you, and then maybe we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think we're in interesting times. I dare say the most fun times I've seen in financial markets ever, right? And I've been doing this for quite a few years. I mean, when you look at all the trends that come together and the things that are happening, right? Meme stocks and SPACs and all these fantastic things, it's almost like the perfect storm, right? And then you add to that COVID, and then you have a really interesting and potentially explosive mix, I think, right? The M&A market in general, I think what we saw on our platform and from our own clients was that last year there was a lot of uncertainty, obviously, with COVID. We saw deals that were not close to the finish line postponed in most cases. But then we also saw a very rapid pickup in activity again. And I think that's also something that's accelerating this year, right? I think obviously distressed M&A will be a big topic, right? Because I think some of the optimism around a potential rebound in the economy is probably a bit exaggerated, especially when you think about all the stimulus packages, not just in the US but in Europe, right? Where you didn't have any insolvencies last year. But I think slowly, as these packages run out and these programs run out, you will start to feel the real effect and the pain in the real economy, right? So I'm a bit less bullish about this. But then again, in other sectors, in tech, of course, you have consolidation, and I think M&A activity will continue to be strong.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. It seems it's easy to talk about global M&A trends, but obviously, given the pandemic, it's kind of a little bit industry specific, right? So obviously, you mentioned tech, and you see a lot of those valuations going pretty sky high, and then other industries maybe where it's a little bit tougher to do due diligence, get transactions completed. Maybe they didn't fare quite so well. So I'd be interested. Can you elaborate a little bit more on maybe kind of what you're seeing as far as valuations and a little bit industry specific?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, maybe let's start with tech, right? Our own industry, because it's obviously the one that I watch the closest. I heard somebody say something fun recently, talking about sales multiples, right? And this guy said 20 is the new 10, right? And when people were talking about 10 times sales for SaaS companies 2-3 years ago, it seemed crazy, right? Who pays 10 times sales for a company? And now we're at 20 times, right? And in the private markets for small, fast-growing companies, probably a lot more than that even. I think it's a result of several trends, right? On the one hand, you have large acquirers that are really flush with cash, right? They've been doing well, maybe even especially well during COVID. M&A is obviously an attractive strategy to continue growth, right? For some of these companies. You have a very low interest rate environment, especially in Europe, right? I mean, in the US, at least interest rates have risen a little bit, but in Europe, they're mostly zero, right? So that means that these large acquirers can even get more cash basically for free, right? And they like to spend it on M&A, which just makes sense. Right? Yeah. So that's definitely something that will continue to accelerate, I think. And as long as interest rates remain low, I think you will continue to see a lot of these acquisitions. So that's in tech, and then in other industries, I can't really comment too much on other industries. I mean, maybe I could, but we'll have to be a bit more specific and talk about individual industries.
No, that's fair. I think staying on the tech piece, one of the arguments I've heard for increased valuations, obviously companies are experiencing a lot of success right now, but there's, this idea out there that, the pandemic has kind of accelerated adoption of different technologies. So they're saying that the total market is essentially increasing at, a very, very fast rate. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that holds true? Do you think that's maybe a little bit overvalued? It'd be interesting to get your take on that.
You mean in the tech sector specifically?
Yes. In tech specifically, typically there's been, some user adoption hurdles, but I guess the theory is, a lot of users who maybe weren't so tech savvy have been forced to adapt these technologies, and so the market's kind of grown.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And then you have some sectors that did exceptionally well, right? Look at video conferencing, look at collaboration solutions, right? For remote work, for example. I mean, obviously these sectors did incredibly well last year, but I think that will continue to be the case, right? Because I think what we didn't think possible 12, 13 months ago is now reality, right? So, and I've heard somebody say what otherwise would have taken 20 years, right? To shift the way we work has now taken, 1 year, right? And a lot of people realized, I think a lot of people realized that, working from home is not so bad. People are not just slacking off the whole day. Well, they're actually spending time on Slack, right? Which has led to Zoom fatigue and Slack fatigue. But I think I think this is something that will continue, right? And to be honest, the repercussions of that for different industries, I can't even think through yet, right? On real estate, commercial real estate, inner cities, and so on. I think it's fascinating what happens right now.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And specifically around kind of getting deals done, doing M&A transactions. There's certainly been an adoption there. So I'd be interested to hear kind of what you've seen as far as, techniques for getting due diligence done. For example, I've heard some examples of using drones to tour facilities, things of that nature. How have you kind of seen people adapt for this environment?
Yeah, as a guy who still saw the last physical data rooms, in what seems like ancient times, right, 10 years ago or so, I can say this is a big advance, a big improvement, right? But I mean, these days it's a reality, right? That for some smaller deals, maybe everything is done over video conferences these days, especially in VC financings, right? I mean, maybe not in large scale M&A, right? But there are deals that happen without anybody having ever physically met, right? And I think if you told somebody that 10 years ago, they would have thought you're crazy, probably. And I mean, what you mentioned, the drone idea, I find that fascinating, right? That just gets me thinking here, what else could be possible, right? And obviously, we're also in the field of facilitating and digitalizing M&A processes. So that's obviously something that's close to what we do. And I would love to have more time to think about these things, right? And how they could potentially also impact our business at Valutico. Is this something you're also seeing? I mean, the example of the drone business and in the data room business, for example?
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, there's definitely deals still have to get done, and people have been very creative. So, the drones was definitely one interesting one, and I've heard that a couple of people mention that. But even things like, board meetings, communications, like you said, collaboration, that's been a big thing as well. So definitely seeing a lot of that. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about SPACs versus IPOs right now. Would love to get your take on kind of the SPAC mania, IPO. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, my favorite topic. I worked on a SPAC project, I think also 10 years ago, back when it was really exotic, right? And that was in Germany where I worked at the time. So nobody had any idea what that even is, right? And I didn't understand it back then, and I have to say I still don't understand it now. I did a lot of reading. It all sounds interesting, but I'm a bit more skeptical. And I think when you look at what happened in the last 3-4 weeks and how these specs reacted to some of the market corrections, I think you'll see that the market is become a bit more skeptical overall on these vehicles. It's, for me, it's a classic late cycle thing, right? If money doesn't know what to do anymore, if too much money is around, then money does stupid things, right? And I don't know, maybe specs are one of these things. But then what surprises me is that you have so many institutional investors, smart money that invests in specs. So maybe I'm just missing something here. I mean, from an issuer's perspective, or from a tech company startup perspective, obviously it makes sense, right? It's a very fast route to market.
Sure.
You don't have to go through the traditional IPO process of whatever, roadshows and all that stuff, and preparing for it and preparing financials, and this takes months, years, right? In some cases, if you can shorten that, if you maybe even have an emergency exit in case markets turn south, I think they certainly have a use. As an investor, I wouldn't invest in a SPAC. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, no, I think I like that take. So let's talk a little bit more about Valutico. Can you kind of tell me what led to you founding Valutico? Obviously this is a space you understand. M&A valuations is something you're very familiar with. And it seems like you're very able of identifying kind of gaps in the market. So I'd be interested to hear about the story behind that.
Yeah, I guess it's like every founder story, right? I worked in the industry. I saw what they call the monkey business, right, and how inefficient some of it is. The endless iterations on the same projects. Working nights to update PowerPoint slides and so on. And I thought there must be a better way. And what we thought was that if people do this in spreadsheets now, and you have all these issues with spreadsheets, error prone, media breaks, and so on, there must be a way to build an integrated solution where all of this is done, in the cloud-based solution, web-based solution. And we started doing this, let me think, 7 years ago. We worked on it for 3 years in our spare time, and then launched it in 2018. So we've been live then another 3 years now. And so far it looks very promising. We're very happy with what we've achieved. But we also have still big plans on what to build next, and where to go next. But in the end, it's a story of I guess we felt the pain ourselves, and we thought somebody has to do something about this.
Very cool. I like that a lot. Can you talk a little bit more about maybe for people who aren't familiar, kind of the specifics of what you do, and maybe start with that first problem that you identified, and kind of what your technical solution for that was?
Yeah, so it's obviously a valuation solution, right? That means I was just talking about the status quo, right? People have spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets. They have certain online resources, databases, and so on, where they get the data from. They build an integrated model in a spreadsheet, and then in the end, they do the valuation on top of that, and then they have to get this to, I guess, slides usually, right? The PowerPoint slides. What we do is that we automate and integrate that whole process. And so you have less errors. You don't reinvent the wheel with every new project. And typically we save people around 50% of the time that each valuation takes. Now, if you consider that valuation analysis is really, it's expensive work. It's really adding a lot of value. If you can do twice the amount of work in the same time, I think you see that the return on investment is very high for our clients.
Yeah,
and then
and I mean,
thinking beyond just putting what's in spreadsheets now on a website, there are a lot of things you can do in a cloud-based solution. So when you think about the ultimate vision of Valutico and the product, it's really that valuations in the future live in the cloud, right? Because if a valuation, now you have one valuation project, right? You build a model, maybe you have a slide deck in the end, and then you forget about it, right? That spreadsheet dies somewhere on a hard drive, and that happens every day, everywhere, thousands of times, right? But valuation is all about comparison, right? Benchmark against other companies, benchmarking against similar comparisons, right? So if you have a system where every new valuation created feeds that system, right, and benefits everybody who does something similar in the future, then I think you have something really powerful, right? And that's ultimately what we want to achieve.
Yeah, no, very cool. It's sounds like there's some type of machine learning AI aspect that you'd like to integrate in the future? That's a system that learns from history. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And we're already doing that. Not machine learning in the narrow sense of the word, but what we do is we learn from behavioral patterns of our users, and we try to learn from these interactions, right? So to give you an example, our system would propose a peer group, right, for evaluation. Peer group is always a group of companies that are similar to the one you're valuing. Now, if the user now changes that peer group, adds certain peers, removes certain peers, we track that, and the system learns if a certain peer is a good peer for that specific company you're valuing, right? And so all of these interactions are benefiting the system. In the future, if somebody does something similar, it will already produce an improved peer group. And we do this in various parts of the system. But yeah, there are lots of things that can be done, right? We are desperately looking for somebody who's good at, natural language processing, for example. We have lots of ideas what could be built there. At the moment, we're partnering with people. Machine learning, obviously, data science. That's not just the future for us, but I think the future in finance in general.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's definitely a topic I want to learn some more about. Unfortunately, my knowledge there is a little bit limited, but it's definitely where the world's going. Let's see, if you and I were celebrating something a year from now, we were toasting to an accomplishment of yours, what would it be?
Well, first of all, it would be your son's first birthday, and then my daughter's first birthday, I guess. Darryl and I had a good conversation.
I like that a lot.
and hopefully, version 3 of Valutico that we're working on right now. It's a big refactoring of our system. I guess maybe the 500 user. That's realistic in that time frame. And what else? Maybe an office in the US, but let's see.
Very cool. I like that a lot. And thank you for mentioning my son. I'm happy we'll be toasting to his first birthday as well as your daughter, of course. Before we finish up here, Paul, is there anything we didn't cover that I should have asked you?
No, I think we covered most topics. Obviously, if your listeners are interested in getting their evaluation teams or their evaluation work to a more productive level, I would love for them to speak to us, get in touch with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And where and how can they do that?
Best to just go to valutico.com. That's Valutico with a V and a C. There are lots of options to get in touch via the website. And also get in touch with me via email, via LinkedIn. The data is on the internet. Yeah, perfect. Well, Paul, thank you so much for your time. This was really great. And I really appreciate you speaking with me today. Great to be on the show. Thank you, Darryl. My pleasure.
On today's show, I had the opportunity to speak with Paul Resh. Paul is a former investment banker turned fintech founder.